There were at least 20 armed men in that crowd, half of them loyal to Manley, half loyal to Seaga, and all of them ready to kill. Bob Marley knew this when he walked onto that stage on April 22, 1978. He knew that what he was about to do could spark a massacre. He knew that forcing Jamaica's two most powerful enemies to stand together, to touch, to acknowledge each other's humanity, he knew it might be the last thing he ever did. But Bob Marley did it anyway. What happened in those 7 minutes on that Kingston stage became one of the most iconic moments in music history. But what you don't know, what nobody talks about, is what happened in the hours before. The death threats, the guns. The mother in the crowd who'd lost her son to political violence just weeks earlier, and the impossible choice Bob made that changed Jamaica forever. If you love discovering the untold stories behind music history's most incredible moments, please like this video and subscribe to our channel. Hit that notification bell because we uncover the hidden gems that shaped the legends we know today. April 21st, 1978, Kingston, Jamaica. One day before the concert. The envelope was plain white. No return address, just Bob Marley's name written in block letters. Tony, Bob's security chief, opened it first. His face went pale. "Bob, you need to see this." Inside was a single piece of paper. The message was clear. "Bring Manley and Seaga together on one stage and you're a dead man. This isn't a threat. It's a promise." Bob read it without expression. Then he handed it back to Tony. "How many of these have we gotten?" "This week? 12. Bob nodded slowly. "And how many concerts have we canceled because of threats?" "None, but Bob, this is different. You're talking about putting the Prime Minister and the opposition leader on the same stage, in the same space. These men hate each other. Their followers have been killing each other in the streets for 2 years. If something goes wrong tomorrow, then something goes wrong," Bob interrupted. "But I'm not canceling. This is exactly why we're doing this concert." Tony stared at his friend. "You're willing to die for this?" Bob was quiet for a moment. Then he said something that would stay with Tony for the rest of his life. "I already almost died for this, Tony. Remember December?" Bob pulled up his shirt, showing the scar from the assassination attempt 15 months earlier. "They shot me in my own home because they thought I was choosing sides. Tomorrow, I'm going to prove I never did. I'm going to show Jamaica that peace is possible, even if it kills me." To understand what Bob was attempting, you need to understand Jamaica in 1978. The island was on the brink of civil war. Manley's Socialist People's National Party and Seaga's conservative Jamaica Labour Party weren't just political opponents. They were armed camps. Neighborhoods were divided by party lines. Cross into the wrong area wearing the wrong color, and you might not come home. People were dying, not in ones and twos, in dozens, in hundreds. And Bob Marley, the most famous Jamaican in the world, was caught in the middle. Both sides wanted his endorsement. Both sides believed his influence could swing elections. When Bob agreed to perform at the Smile Jamaica concert in 1976, a concert organized by Manley's party, Seaga's supporters saw it as a betrayal. That's when they came to his house. That's when they shot him, shot his wife Rita, shot his manager Don Taylor. That's when Bob learned that in Jamaica in the 1970s, even neutrality could get you killed. After recovering, Bob left Jamaica, spent over a year in exile in London, made the Exodus album, tried to process the trauma of being shot in his own home for wanting peace. But Bob couldn't stay away. Jamaica was his home. His people were suffering. And he believed, deeply, spiritually believed, that music could heal what politics had broken. So in early 1978, Bob started planning something unprecedented, a peace concert, not affiliated with any party, not supporting any candidate, just music, just unity, just one love. He called it the One Love Peace Concert. The idea was simple but radical. Bring everyone together. Both parties, both leaders, all of Jamaica. put them in one place and force them to remember they were one people, one nation, one family. But there was one element of Bob's plan that terrified everyone around him. He wasn't just going to have Manley and Seaga in the audience. He was going to bring them on stage, together. "That's suicide," his manager told him. "You're asking two men who want each other dead to stand next to each other in front of 40,000 people. What if one of them refuses? What if their followers start shooting? What if it works?" Bob interrupted. "What if we show Jamaica that their leaders can stand together for 5 minutes? What if that's all it takes to remind people that we don't have to kill each other?" April 22nd, 1978, National Stadium, Kingston. 6 p.m. 40,000 people were already packed into the stadium. The energy was electric but tense. Everyone knew what tonight was supposed to represent. But everyone also knew how easily peace concerts could turn into bloodbaths. Security was unprecedented. Police everywhere. Metal detectors at every entrance. But Bob knew, that if someone wanted to cause violence, they'd find a way. Backstage, Bob sat quietly in his dressing room. The Wailers were warming up. Other artists were performing their sets. But Bob was still centered, preparing himself for what he had to do. There was a knock on the door. "Mr. Marley, the Prime Minister is here." Michael Manley entered the room. Tall, charismatic, the socialist leader who'd promised to lift Jamaica's poor and instead had watched the country descend into violence. "Bob," Manley said, extending his hand. "Thank you for doing this." Bob shook his hand, but didn't smile. "Are you ready for what I'm going to ask you to do tonight?" Manley's expression shifted, uncertain. "What do you mean?" "I'm going to bring you and Seaga on stage, together. I'm going to ask you to shake hands, in front of everyone." The color drained from Manley's face. "Bob, I don't know if that's possible?" Bob finished. "It has to be possible. You're the Prime Minister. You're supposed to lead. Lead by showing peace." Manley was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. "If Seaga agrees, I'll do it." 20 minutes later, Edward Seaga arrived backstage. Shorter than Manley, more conservative in dress, representing the capitalist opposition. When he was told about Bob's plan, his reaction was immediate. "Absolutely not. I'm not going to give Manley the satisfaction of—" "This isn't about satisfaction," Bob interrupted, his voice firm. "This is about Jamaica. This is about stopping the killing. Can you do that for 5 minutes? Can you stand next to the man you hate and show your people that peace is more important than politics?" Seaga stared at Bob. "You're asking me to commit political suicide." "I'm asking you to save lives," Bob replied. The two leaders never spoke to each other backstage. They were kept in separate areas, but both had agreed. When Bob called them, they would come. At 10:30 p.m., Bob Marley and the Wailers took the stage. The crowd erupted. 40,000 voices screaming, cheering, celebrating. Bob stood at the microphone, looking out at a sea of people, PNP supporters in orange, JLP supporters in green, all mixed together in a way that would have been impossible anywhere else in Kingston. Bob opened with Trench Town Rock. The crowd moved as one. Then Them Bellyful. Then Rebel Music. Each song building energy, building unity, building toward the moment everyone was waiting for, but nobody quite believed would happen. And then Bob began playing Jamming. This was it. Bob could feel it. The right song. The right moment. The crowd was euphoric, united in music if nothing else. Bob stopped singing mid-verse. The music continued, but Bob stepped back from the microphone. The crowd went quiet, confused. Bob spoke. His voice was calm, but it carried through the stadium. "I want to bring two people up here tonight. Two people who Jamaica needs to see together." The stadium went dead silent. Everyone knew who he meant. These two men have let politics divide this island, let violence divide our people, but tonight, we're going to show Jamaica that peace is possible, that unity is possible. that one love is more than just words. Bob turned to the side of the stage. Prime Minister Manley, Opposition Leader Seaga, come up here, please. For a moment, nothing happened. The stadium held its breath. Then Michael Manley appeared from stage left, Edward Seaga from stage right. 40,000 people gasped. The two men who'd been tearing Jamaica apart were walking toward each other. On stage, in front of everyone. But they weren't looking at each other. Both were looking at Bob. Bob stood between them. He reached out and took Manley's right hand, took Seaga's left hand, and then, in one fluid motion, he brought their hands together and clasped them between his own. Show the people that you love them, Bob shouted into the microphone. Show them that unity is possible. The two leaders' hands were joined, raised above their heads, Bob holding them together. The stadium exploded, not in violence, in hope. 40,000 people screaming, crying, jumping, orange and green mixing into one massive wave of emotion. But in that crowd, there was a woman who wasn't cheering. Her name was Sandra Morrison. She was 32 years old. 3 weeks earlier, her 19-year-old son, Marcus, had been shot and killed in political violence. He'd been wearing an orange shirt in a green neighborhood. Wrong place, wrong color, wrong time. Sandra had come to the concert because her daughter had begged her to. Mama, please, we need hope. We need to believe things can change. But Sandra didn't believe. How could she? Her son was dead. No handshake was going to bring him back. She watched Bob force those two men to hold hands, watched 40,000 people celebrate like this changed anything, and she felt nothing but rage. But then something happened that Sandra would remember for the rest of her life. As Manley and Seaga stood there, hands clasped, Bob began singing again. One love, one heart. Let's get together and feel all right. And Sandra saw something she never thought she'd see. Both men, these powerful, proud, political enemies, had tears running down their faces. They weren't faking it. They weren't performing. In that moment, forced to stand together, forced to feel the weight of what their conflict had done to Jamaica, they were genuinely moved. Seaga was looking out at the crowd, at his supporters and Manley's supporters all celebrating together, and he was crying. Manley was gripping Seaga's hand now, not pulling away, but actually holding on, and tears were streaming down his face. And Bob, standing between them, was singing with everything he had. Let's get together to fight this holy Armageddon. Sandra felt something break open in her chest. Not forgiveness, not yet, but something else. A crack in the wall of her grief, a tiny sliver of possibility that maybe, just maybe, her son's death could mean something if it led to this. If it led to change. The moment lasted 7 minutes. Bob kept those two men's hands clasped together for 7 minutes while he sang One Love, and 40,000 people sang with him. When it finally ended, when Bob released their hands, Manley and Seaga didn't immediately pull away. They stood there for a moment, still holding hands, looking at each other for the first time in years with something other than hatred. Then Seaga did something nobody expected. He leaned in and whispered something in Manley's ear. Whatever he said made Manley nod, squeeze his hand once more, and whisper something back. Nobody ever learned what they said to each other. But something had shifted. Something fundamental had changed. Bob let them leave the stage. The crowd was still cheering, still crying, still processing what they'd just witnessed. Bob returned to the microphone one last time. Peace is not something we wait for, he said. Peace is something we make. Tonight, we made peace. Tomorrow, we keep making it. Every day. Until the violence stops. Until the killing stops. Until we remember we are one people. The concert ended. 40,000 people poured out of National Stadium that night transformed. Not cured, not fixed, but changed. The violence in Jamaica didn't stop immediately. Political tensions continued, but something had shifted. The image of those two men holding hands, forced together by Bob Marley's courage, became iconic. It became a reminder that even the deepest hatreds could be bridged, even if just for 7 minutes. Sandra Morrison went home that night and did something she hadn't done since her son died. She slept. Not well, not peacefully. But she slept. And when she woke up, she made a decision. She started a foundation in her son's name, the Marcus Morrison Peace Initiative, dedicated to bringing together young people from rival political areas, teaching them that they didn't have to continue their parents' wars. Over the next 40 years, Sandra's foundation would help hundreds of young Jamaicans choose peace over violence. And it all started because Bob Marley refused to accept that hatred was inevitable. The photograph of that moment, Bob standing between Manley and Seaga, their hands raised together, became one of the most iconic images in Jamaican history. It's still displayed in schools, government buildings, museums. Bob Marley died 3 years later, in 1981. Jamaica gave him a state funeral. Both Michael Manley and Edward Seaga attended. They sat on opposite sides of the church, but when Bob's casket was carried out, they both stood at the same time, tears on both their faces, remembering the night Bob had forced them to hold hands. Years later, in a rare interview together, Manley and Seaga were asked about that night. "Did it change anything?" the interviewer asked. "Did those 7 minutes actually make a difference?" Seaga answered first. "Bob showed us something that night. He showed us that our hatred for each other was destroying the country we both claimed to love. Did it stop the violence immediately? No. But it planted a seed. It made us realize that peace was possible if we chose it." Manley nodded. Bob risked his life that night. He'd already been shot once for trying to bring peace, and he still got on that stage and forced us to confront what we'd become. That takes a kind of courage most people never find. Today, over 45 years later, the One Love Peace concert is remembered as one of Bob Marley's greatest achievements. Not because of the music, though the music was perfect, but because of 7 minutes when Bob Marley made the impossible happen. He made two enemies touch, made them stand together, made them remember they were human beings before they were politicians. And in doing so, he showed Jamaica and the world that peace isn't something that happens to us. It's something we make, together, one moment at a time, one hand at a time, one love. If this incredible story of courage, unity, and the power of refusing to accept hatred moved you, make sure to subscribe and hit that like button. Share this video with someone who needs to be reminded that peace is always possible if we're brave enough to make it. Have you ever witnessed a moment when someone brought enemies together? Let us know in the comments. And don't forget to ring that notification bell for more untold stories about the moments that changed history.